The boss was frozen when he saw his lost daughter's pendant around the gardener's neck. The afternoon sun draped itself across the Calder estate like liquid gold, turning the rose gardens into something out of a painting. Thomas Calder stood at his office window, pen hovering over a contract worth $8 million, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. It usually was, 50 years old, and he still couldn't focus on the present. His therapist, the fourth one in 10 years, kept telling him that acceptance was part of healing. But how do you accept that your 5-year-old daughter vanished in broad daylight? How do you forgive yourself for being 20 minutes late? He sighed, pressing his fingers against his temples. The headaches had been worse lately. Probably stress, probably guilt that never quite went away, no matter how many zeros he added to his bank account. That's when something caught his eye. Thomas lifted his head. Down in the garden, between the blue hydrangeas his late ex-wife had loved so much, a young woman knelt by the bushes with pruning shears. She couldn't have been more than mid-20s, wearing a faded green uniform that had seen better days. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her face had that sun-kissed look of someone who spent their life outdoors. But it wasn't any of that which made Thomas's breath catch in his throat. It was the necklace, small, golden, catching the afternoon light like it was winking at him, heart-shaped with a star etched in the center. It swayed gently as she worked, and Thomas felt his knees go weak. He knew that necklace. He'd know it anywhere. He'd had it custom-made at a jeweler in Pasadena 19 years ago, paid extra for the engraving on the back, placed it around his daughter's neck on her 5th birthday, while she squealed with delight, "Daddy, it's shining like a real star." 3 days later, Valentina was gone. Thomas didn't remember deciding to move. One moment he was at his desk. The next he was halfway down the marble staircase, his heart hammering against his ribs. The butler said something to him, probably asking if he needed anything. But Thomas didn't hear it. Couldn't hear anything over the roar of blood in his ears. He pushed through the French doors that led to the gardens, his expensive Italian shoes crunching on the gravel path. The young woman still hadn't noticed him. She was completely absorbed in her work, humming something under her breath. "Miss!" His voice came out rough, broken. She jumped, spinning around with dirt-stained hands pressed against her chest. "Oh, Mr. Calder, I'm so sorry. I didn't hear you coming. Is everything okay? Do you need something?" American accent. West Coast? Probably California born and raised. Her eyes were light brown, warm despite the obvious nervousness at being approached by her employer. Thomas couldn't take his eyes off the necklace. That necklace! Where did you get it? Her hand flew to her throat, fingers wrapping protectively around the golden heart. It was... She hesitated, something vulnerable flickering across her face. "It was the only thing I had with me. They said I was wearing it when they found me." The world tilted. When they found you? Yeah. She looked uncomfortable now, like she'd revealed too much. "I grew up in an orphanage up in Fresno. Someone left me there when I was about 5, I think. I don't remember anything before that, just this necklace." Thomas couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at this young woman who looked so beautifully, impossibly ordinary. Could I see it, please?" She bit her lip, clearly uncertain about handing over what was probably her most precious possession to a man who was practically a stranger. But something in his face must have convinced her, because she slowly reached back and unclasped it. The metal was warm from her skin when she placed it in his trembling hand. Thomas turned it over with shaking fingers, searching for the engraving he knew had to be there. The gold had worn thin in spots, 19 years of constant wear taking its toll, but the words were still legible. "To Valentina, my eternal star, Dad." The sound that came out of Thomas's throat wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a gasp. His legs gave out. One of the wealthiest men in California dropped to his knees in the middle of his own garden, clutching a necklace to his chest like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Maybe it was. Sir, what's wrong? Are you okay?" The young woman, Grace, her name tag said Grace, knelt beside him, one dirt-stained hand hovering uncertainly near his shoulder. "Should I call someone? Do you need a doctor?" Thomas looked up at her through tears. He hadn't even realized he was crying, really looked at her for the first time. And there, beneath the simple clothes and the working tan and the 19 years of life he knew nothing about, he saw it. Those light brown eyes, the shape of her chin, the dimple in her left cheek that only showed when she was worried, just like it had when she was 5 years old and thought she'd done something wrong. "You," his voice cracked. "You're my daughter." Grace stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Hell, maybe he had. Maybe this was what finally broke him, seeing a necklace on a stranger and constructing an entire impossible fantasy around it. But the engraving was real. The necklace was real. And somewhere, buried under 19 years of survival and forgotten memories, his daughter was real too. I don't understand," Grace whispered, her eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" Thomas held up the necklace, his hand still shaking. I had this made. For my daughter, for Valentina. She disappeared 19 years ago from a park in Pasadena. She was 5 years old. She was wearing this." Grace's face had gone pale. That's not possible. I'm nobody. Just a girl who grew up in foster care. You can't just... Please." Thomas didn't care that he was begging, didn't care that tears were streaming down his face or that his $5,000 suit was getting covered in dirt and grass stains. "Please, just sit with me. Let me explain. Let me tell you what happened." For a long moment, Grace just stared at him. Thomas could see the thoughts racing behind her eyes, probably trying to figure out if her boss had completely lost it, if she should run, if she should call for help. But then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, yeah, let's go sit down somewhere." They ended up in the gazebo at the far end of the garden, sitting across from each other like strangers, which is exactly what they were. Except Thomas knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that they weren't strangers at all. As the golden afternoon stretched toward evening, Thomas Calder began to tell Grace the story of the worst day of his life, and with every word, he watched something shift in her eyes, confusion giving way to uncertainty giving way to something that looked almost like hope. The necklace lay on the table between them, catching the last rays of sunlight, shining like the star his daughter had always believed it to be. The gazebo felt both too large and too small for the weight of what Thomas was about to say. Grace sat across from him, hands folded in her lap, the necklace still lying between them like a bridge across 19 years of darkness. Thomas didn't know where to start. How do you compress nearly 2 decades of grief into words that make sense? "Her name was Valentina," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "My daughter. She had your eyes. That exact shade of brown that looks gold when the sun hits it just right. She loved strawberries and hated bedtime. She'd make me read the same story 3 times before she'd even consider sleeping." Grace didn't say anything, but her fingers tightened around each other. "I was married to her mother, Margaret. We were having problems." Thomas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that had become habit whenever he talked about those days. "Nothing terrible, just the usual stuff. I worked too much. She felt alone. We started fighting more than we talked. Her sister Eleanor, Margaret's sister, she didn't help matters. Always in Margaret's ear about how I was this arrogant businessman who didn't appreciate what he had. Was she right?" Grace asked quietly. The question hit harder than Thomas expected. Yeah, she probably was. I was building an empire and missing my daughter's childhood. Classic story, right? You don't know what you have until it's gone." He picked up the necklace, turning it over in his hands like a prayer. "We separated when Valentina was 4. Nothing official. Just, Margaret moved out, took Valentina with her. I got her on weekends. It was messy and it hurt, but we were trying to figure it out, for Valentina's sake. The memory of that spring day 19 years ago was so vivid it might as well have been yesterday. Thomas could still smell the jasmine blooming outside his office, could still hear his assistant reminding him he needed to leave early to pick up his daughter. It was a Saturday in April, he continued. Margaret was taking Valentina to the park near our old house in Pasadena, the one with the big playground and the duck pond. I was supposed to pick her up at 5, had it marked on my calendar. Set 3 alarms on my phone. I wasn't going to be late. Not this time. Grace leaned forward slightly, drawn into the story despite herself. But there was a meeting, last-minute thing with investors from Japan. I told myself it would be quick. 30 minutes, tops. I'd still make it on time. Thomas's voice cracked. It wasn't quick. The meeting ran long. Traffic was hell. I didn't get to the park until almost 6. He could still see it. The police cars, the flashing lights. Margaret's face white as death as she screamed at the officers that they needed to do more. Find more. Search harder. Valentina was gone, just gone. Margaret said she'd been on the swings 1 minute, and then she turned around to grab something from her bag. And when she looked back, Thomas had to stop, swallow hard against the lump in his throat. She was 5 years old. She couldn't have just wandered off. Someone took her. Grace's hand had moved to her throat, pressing against the spot where the necklace usually hung. The police searched everywhere, put out Amber Alerts, had volunteers combing the area for weeks. But there was nothing, no witnesses, no demands, no body. He hated that last word, hated that he'd had to think it so many times over the years. She just vanished. And her mother, Grace's voice was barely above a whisper. Margaret never recovered. She blamed herself. I blamed myself. We blamed each other. Thomas set the necklace back down, unable to look at it anymore. She fell into this deep depression, wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, spent all her time making flyers, calling tip lines, driving around to places Valentina had never even been. Eleanor tried to help, but Margaret had just disappeared inside herself. 2 years after Valentina vanished, Margaret died. The doctor said it was heart failure, but we both know what it really was. Grace's eyes were shining with unshed tears. She died of a broken heart. Yeah, Thomas nodded. And I kept going because, hell, I don't know why. Guilt, maybe, built the business bigger, made more money than I could ever spend, hired private investigators who found nothing, chased leads that went nowhere. For 19 years, I've looked for her in every crowd, every park, every little girl with brown hair. I never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. And now, he finally met Grace's eyes. Now you're sitting here, wearing the one thing that could prove who you are. The necklace I had custom made, the one that was on my daughter when she disappeared. Grace touched her throat again, like she could still feel the weight of it. I don't remember anything. They told me at the orphanage that someone dropped me off saying I was a relative's kid, that there'd been some family trouble, left some cash for my care and disappeared. The necklace was all I had. Do you remember anything at all? Even flashes, dreams. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the necklace. Sometimes I dream about a man in a suit. He picks me up and spins me around, and I'm laughing. Really laughing, you know. The kind of laugh you can't fake, and there's sunshine, and I feel safe. Thomas felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed. He used to do that. Spin Valentina around until they were both dizzy. Her laughter the best sound he'd ever heard. We need to do a DNA test, he said, the words tumbling out. I know this sounds crazy. I know you probably think I've lost my mind. But please, let me do this. Let me know for sure. Grace studied him for a long moment. Thomas could see the war playing out behind her eyes. The orphan girl who'd learned not to hope too hard, battling against the part of her that desperately wanted this impossible story to be true. Okay, she finally said. Okay, we can do the test, but Mr. Calder... Thomas, please. Thomas, she corrected softly. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this is just a coincidence, that I'm not her. I don't want you to get hurt. He almost laughed. Almost. Grace, I've been hurt for 19 years. If there's even a chance, even the smallest possibility, that I've found my daughter, then I have to know. I have to. She nodded slowly. How long will it take? The test. A few days, maybe a week. I'll have my doctor expedite everything. Thomas leaned forward, desperate now. Stay here, at the house, as a guest, not an employee. Let me get to know you while we wait, please. I don't think that's appropriate. I work for you. You might be my daughter. The words hung in the air between them. And even if you're not, even if this is all some impossible coincidence, I need this. I need to believe, just for a little while, that maybe, the universe isn't completely cruel. Grace looked down at her dirt-stained uniform, then back at the mansion visible through the garden. I wouldn't even know how to act in a place like this. Just be yourself. That's all I'm asking. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In that golden light, Thomas could almost see her, the little girl who'd called him daddy, who'd believed a metal heart could shine like a real star. "Okay," Grace said finally. "I'll stay until we get the results." Thomas closed his eyes, overwhelmed with gratitude and terror in equal measure, because now there was hope, and hope, he'd learned, could hurt worse than grief, but it could also save you. Grace moved into one of the guest rooms that evening, though calling it a room felt like an understatement. It was larger than any apartment she'd ever lived in, with a 4-poster bed, its own sitting area, and a bathroom with marble everything. She stood in the doorway for a full minute, afraid to step inside with her work boots still covered in garden dirt. "The closet has some clothes that should fit," Thomas had told her, his voice still thick with emotion. "They belonged to, well, they're new. I had my assistant pick up some things, just in case you said yes. Just in case." Like he'd been hoping for this moment even before it happened, Grace showered for the first time in a bathroom that felt like a spa, watching 19 years of hard living swirl down a drain that probably cost more than her car. When she emerged wrapped in a towel that was somehow both impossibly soft and impossibly white, she found the closet Thomas had mentioned. He wasn't kidding. There were jeans in her size, comfortable sweaters, even pajamas with the tags still attached. Grace ran her fingers over the fabrics, fighting the urge to check the price tags. She'd learned early in life that knowing what things cost only made you feel worse about not having them. She dressed in simple jeans and a blue sweater, then sat on the edge of the bed, which felt like sitting on a cloud, and tried to process what had just happened to her life. This morning, she'd been Grace Murphy, 24-year-old nobody with a high school diploma and dirt under her fingernails. Now she was potentially Valentina Calder, missing heiress to a fortune she couldn't even comprehend. It was too much. All of it. The knock on her door made her jump. "Come in." Thomas entered, and she noticed he'd changed too. Traded his ruined suit for casual slacks and a button-down with the sleeves rolled up. He looked younger somehow, less like a CEO and more like just a dad. "I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed," he said, hovering uncertainly in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to enter. "It's perfect, really. This is all." Grace gestured around the room. "It's a lot. Too much. I don't know yet." She offered a small smile. "Ask me when my head stops spinning." Thomas smiled back, but it faded quickly. "Grace, I need you to know that whatever happens with the test, whatever we find out, you have a job here as long as you want one. And not just as a gardener. I mean, if you want to keep working with the plants, that's great, but Thomas," she cut him off gently, "one thing at a time, okay? Let's just see what the test says." He nodded, looking relieved that she'd stopped him from making promises he might not be able to keep. "Right, one thing at a time. Dinner's at 7 if you're hungry. Nothing fancy, I promise." After he left, Grace lay back on the cloud bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this massive house was a man who believed she was his daughter, a man who'd spent 19 years looking for a little girl in every face he passed. What if she wasn't that girl? What if the necklace was just a coincidence? Some cosmic joke? What if she was? The next morning, Thomas's personal physician arrived to draw blood for the DNA test. Dr. Chen was professional and kind, asking questions about her medical history that Grace mostly couldn't answer. "I was pretty healthy as a kid, I guess. No major illnesses that I know of." "That I know of," was a phrase Grace used a lot. It was the orphan's disclaimer, the acknowledgement that her life had a 5-year blank spot where memories should be. "Results in 3 to 5 days. Doctor," Chen promised as she packed up her kit. "I'll call Mr. Calder the moment they're in." 3 to 5 days. Grace could survive 3 to 5 days of this strange limbo. She spent the morning walking the estate, reacquainting herself with gardens she'd only known as work sites. Everything looked different from this side of things, less like tasks to be completed, and more like art to be appreciated. The rose garden alone probably cost more to maintain than she'd earned in the past 2 years. She was examining a bed of white tulips when she heard the voice. "So you're the girl who's convinced Thomas she's his long-lost daughter." Grace turned to find a woman watching her from the stone pathway. 60-ish, elegant in that way that comes from a lifetime of money, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than Grace's car. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her smile was the coldest thing Grace had ever seen. "I'm Grace," she said, straightening up, "and I haven't convinced anyone of anything. We're waiting on a DNA test." "How convenient." The woman moved closer, her heels clicking on the stone. "A necklace that anyone could have stolen or copied, and a sad story about being abandoned at an orphanage. Tell me, Grace, how long have you been planning this little con?" Grace felt her face flush. I didn't plan anything. I was hired to work in the garden. I didn't even know who Thomas was until you saw an opportunity." The woman's smile sharpened. "I've seen this before, you know. When someone has money like Thomas does, the vultures circle. Usually they're a little more sophisticated about it. I'll give you that. The orphan angle is a nice touch. Who are you?" "Eleanor Price. I'm Thomas's sister-in-law. Or I was, before my sister died of grief over losing her daughter." Eleanor's eyes raked over Grace, assessing and dismissing. "I know what real loss looks like, dear, and I know what opportunism looks like too." Grace wanted to argue, to defend herself, but what could she say? She didn't remember being Valentina Calder. She couldn't prove anything until the test came back, and Eleanor was right. From the outside, this whole thing looked suspicious as hell. "I understand why you'd think that," Grace said carefully, "but I'm not trying to con anyone. If the DNA test says I'm not his daughter, I'll leave. No drama, no demands. You have my word. The word of a stranger means very little." "I'm afraid," Eleanor adjusted her purse on her shoulder, "but I suppose we'll see what the test reveals. Though I have to warn you, DNA tests can be faked. Necklaces can be stolen if you think you're going to waltz in here and claim a fortune that doesn't belong to you. You're going to be very disappointed." She walked away before Grace could respond, leaving her standing alone among the tulips, feeling like she'd just been slapped. Grace found Thomas in his office an hour later, staring at a photograph on his desk. When he saw her in the doorway, he quickly wiped at his eyes. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," she said. "No, please, come in." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I was just looking at old photos. Probably not the healthiest thing to do, but..." Grace could see the picture from where she sat. A little girl with brown hair and a gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing of what might have been a house, or possibly a very square dog. "She was beautiful," Grace said softly. "She was perfect." Thomas set the photo down carefully. "You look like her, you know. It's not just the necklace. There's something in your face. The way you tilt your head when you're thinking. The dimple in your left cheek. Margaret used to say Valentina got that from my side of the family." Grace touched her cheek unconsciously. "I met Eleanor this morning." Thomas's expression darkened. "What did she say?" "That I'm a con artist. That I'm after your money." Grace met his eyes. "Is that what you think?" "No." His answer was immediate and firm. "No, I don't think that at all. Eleanor is complicated. She's been through a lot. Lost her sister. Watched this family fall apart. She's protective, but sometimes that comes out as paranoia. She said DNA tests can be faked." Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Grace, I've been doing business for 30 years. I know when someone is trying to manipulate me, and you're not. You didn't come to me with this necklace. I came to you. You didn't ask for anything, hell. You were reluctant to even stay here. But what if..." "No what ifs," Thomas interrupted gently. "Not until we have the results. Eleanor will believe what she wants to believe. Right now, I'm choosing to have hope. Is that okay with you?" Grace felt something loosen in her chest. Yeah, that's okay with me." That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She wandered the halls of the mansion, running her fingers along walls that probably had more history than she did. She ended up in the main living room, where a large painting hung above the fireplace. It showed a woman and a small child in a field of sunflowers. The woman was beautiful, but sad, holding the child like she was afraid to let go. The little girl was laughing, reaching toward a butterfly. Grace stared at the painting for a long time, feeling something stir in the back of her mind, something old and buried and trying desperately to surface. She'd seen this painting before. She didn't know how or when or why, but she knew she had. Thomas insisted Grace join him for dinner the next evening, not in the formal dining room. Too stuffy, he'd said, but in a smaller space off the kitchen that still managed to be nicer than any restaurant Grace had ever been to. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, no relation to the doctor, had prepared roasted chicken with herbs. Grace couldn't identify in vegetables that actually tasted like something. Grace ate slowly, hyper-aware of every movement, terrified she'd use the wrong fork or commit some social crime that would prove she didn't belong here. "You can relax, you know," Thomas said, watching her with amusement. "It's just dinner. Just dinner in a house worth more than a small country," Grace muttered, then froze. "Sorry, that was honest." Thomas smiled. "I like honest. I'm surrounded by people who tell me what they think I want to hear. It's refreshing." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Grace found herself asking, "What was she like, Valentina? I mean, really like, not just the highlights." Thomas set down his fork, his expression softening in that way it did whenever he talked about his daughter. "She was stubborn as hell. Got that from both of us. Unfortunately, once she decided she wanted something, there was no talking her out of it." He laughed quietly. "When she was 4, she decided she wanted to be a dinosaur for Halloween, not dress up as one, actually be one. Threw a fit when we tried to explain that wasn't possible. What did you do? Bought her a T-Rex costume and told her she was the most realistic dinosaur I'd ever seen." Thomas's eyes were distant, lost in memory. "She wore it for 3 weeks straight. To the grocery store, to the park, even tried to wear it to bed. Margaret finally had to hide it just to get her to wear normal clothes." Grace found herself smiling. "That sounds exhausting." "It was." Thomas picked up his wine glass. "It was also the best time of my life. I was too stupid to realize it then. You couldn't have known." "I should have." His voice went hard. "I should have been there on time. Should have picked up my daughter when I said I would. Should have." He stopped himself, jaw tight. "Sorry. Old guilt dies hard." Grace understood that. She'd spent years carrying her own version. The guilt of being abandoned, of somehow not being worth keeping. It was irrational, she knew. But knowing something and feeling it were different things. They moved to the living room after dinner, and Grace found herself drawn again to the painting of the sunflowers. In the lamplight, the colors seemed to shimmer, the woman's sad smile even more pronounced. "That's Margaret," Thomas said, coming to stand beside her. "And Valentina. An artist friend painted it about 3 months before." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Grace stepped closer to the painting, her heart starting to beat faster. "When did you hang this back up?" "About 6 months ago. It was in storage for years. Too painful to look at. But my therapist said hiding from the past wasn't helping. So," Thomas shrugged. "Now it's here. The sunflowers," Grace heard herself say. "They were so tall, taller than me. And the smell. They smelled like sunshine feels, if that makes sense." Thomas went very still beside her. "What?" Grace's hand rose to her temple, pressing against a sudden headache. There was a butterfly. A monarch, I think. Orange and black. It landed on one of the flowers, and Mama. She stopped, the word freezing in her throat. I mean, the woman. She was crying. Why was she crying when everything was so beautiful? "Grace." Thomas's voice was strained. "How do you know that?" "I don't know. Grace stared at the painting, and suddenly it wasn't just paint anymore. It was a memory, fuzzy and incomplete, but real. The paint was still wet. I remember because I touched it and got yellow on my fingers, and someone, you said it was okay, that paintings were meant to be touched. But that wasn't true because the artist got upset." Thomas grabbed her shoulders gently, turning her to face him. His eyes were wide, almost wild. The artist did get upset. He said Valentina had ruined the piece, that he'd have to start over, I told him. If he couldn't handle a child being curious, he was a shitty artist. We fought about it. But he didn't start over. Grace continued, the words coming faster now. He left the fingerprint, said it made it more real, more honest. Thomas's hands trembled on her shoulders. "Grace, how do you know that? That painting was locked away. I only brought it out recently. You couldn't have... I was there." Grace felt tears streaming down her face without knowing when they'd started. "Oh God, I was there. I remember the field. It was summer, and the sunflowers were everywhere. And Mama was sad because Because the headache intensified, and with it came more fragments. A park, swings creaking, the smell of popcorn, a woman's voice calling her name. Valentina, sweetie, don't go too far. But she had gone far. Not far, really. Just to see the ducks. She loved the ducks with their funny waddles and quacking. Someone had been there. Someone who'd smiled at her and said her daddy sent them to get her. That it was a surprise. She'd believe them. Why wouldn't she? She was 5 years old. Grace's knees buckled, and Thomas caught her, lowering them both to the floor. It's okay. You're okay. Just breathe. I remember, Grace gasped. Not everything, but pieces. The park. The ducks. Someone came and said you sent them. That it was a surprise. I went with them because I thought, who? Thomas's voice was urgent. Who came, Grace? Did you see their face? Grace squeezed her eyes shut, trying to pull the memory into focus. But it was like trying to hold water in her hands. I don't know. It's blurry. Everything after that is just dark. And then the orphanage. Thomas held her while she cried, his own tears falling into her hair. It's okay. It's okay. You're safe now. You're home. But was she? Grace didn't know this house. Didn't know this life. She was a stranger wearing someone else's memories like an ill-fitting coat. The ducks, she said suddenly, pulling back to look at Thomas. You used to take me to feed the ducks. At a different park before, one closer to home. You'd buy the duck food even though the sign said not to feed them, and you'd let me throw it. And I'd always throw too hard and scare them away. Thomas laughed through his tears. Every single time. You had zero concept of gentle. And the bedtime stories, you'd read them in different voices. Grace's own voice was wondering, like she was discovering herself for the first time. The big bad wolf sounded like a movie gangster. The 3 little pigs had British accents. It was ridiculous. You loved it. I did. Grace touched her face, feeling the tears there like proof she was real. Thomas, I remember. Not everything, but enough. I remember you. They sat there on the floor of the living room, surrounded by wealth that meant nothing compared to what they'd found. Not proof. The DNA test would provide that. But something more important. Recognition. I have more photos, Thomas said eventually. Albums full, would you? Would you want to look through them with me? Grace nodded, not trusting her voice. They spent the next 2 hours on the couch. Going through album after album, Thomas narrated each photo. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, Grace would feel that spark of recognition. A birthday party where she'd insisted on wearing her swimsuit despite it being February. A trip to the beach where she'd been more interested in the sand than the water. Her first day of preschool, clutching Thomas's hand like a lifeline. I was terrified, Grace said, looking at that last photo, of being left alone with strangers. Thomas closed his eyes. You cried for an hour. The teacher finally called me to come back. Margaret was furious that I'd given in, but I couldn't. Couldn't leave me upset. Grace finished. You stayed the whole first week, sitting in the back of the classroom. You remember that. I'm starting to. As the night wore on, more pieces fell into place. Not a complete picture. There were still huge gaps. Years lost to whatever trauma had locked her memories away. But enough. Enough to know that Grace Murphy and Valentina Calder were the same person. The DNA test would confirm it. But in her heart, Grace already knew. She was home. The call came on a Thursday morning, 4 days after Dr. Chen had drawn their blood. Grace was in the garden. Her garden again, though it felt different now, when she saw Thomas running toward her from the house. Actually running. His phone still pressed to his ear. His face lit up in a way that made her heart stop. She knew before he said anything. It's positive, Thomas said, breathless. Grace, Valentina, it's positive. You're my daughter. The DNA is a match. You're really her. You're really... He couldn't finish. Just pulled her into his arms and held on like he'd never let go again. Grace felt her own tears start, hot and fast, soaking into his shirt. I'm home, she whispered. Dad, I'm really home. Dad. The word felt strange and perfect all at once, like a shoe she'd forgotten she owned finally fitting again. Thomas pulled back. cupping her face in his hands. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there, that I let this happen, that you spent 19 years. Stop. Grace covered his hands with hers. You didn't let anything happen. Someone took me. That's not your fault. I was late. 20 minutes. You were 20 minutes late. That's not a crime, Dad. That's just being human. She smiled through her tears. And you never gave up looking. That's what matters. They stood there in the garden, holding each other while the morning sun painted everything gold. Grace, Valentina, felt something click into place inside her chest. A piece of herself she hadn't known was missing suddenly found and returned. We need to celebrate, Thomas said finally, wiping his eyes. Properly, I'll call everyone. We'll have dinner here, make the announcement official, unless you'd rather keep it quiet for now. Grace thought about that. Part of her wanted to hide, to keep this precious thing private and safe. But another part, the part that was tired of being nobody, of having no history, no family, no roots, wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Let's tell people, she said. I'm tired of hiding. Thomas beamed. I'll have Mrs. Chen prepare something special, and we should call my lawyer. Start the paperwork to officially restore your identity. Change your name back if you want, though Grace is beautiful if you'd rather. Valentina Grace, she interrupted. If that's okay, I don't want to lose who I became, but I want to remember who I was too. Valentina Grace Calder. Thomas tested it out. It's perfect. You're perfect. They walked back to the house together, Thomas's arm around her shoulders like he was afraid she might disappear again if he let go. Grace understood. She felt the same way. The celebration dinner was planned for that evening. Small, Thomas promised. Just a few close friends and business associates, people who'd known Valentina before, who'd helped search for her after, and Eleanor. Of course, Thomas's sister-in-law, who'd made it clear she thought Grace was a fraud. She needs to hear it from us, Thomas said when Grace suggested maybe Eleanor shouldn't come. And she needs to see the test results. Once she understands this is real, she'll come around. Grace wasn't so sure, but she nodded anyway. This was Thomas's family, however complicated. She wouldn't ask him to choose. By 6 o'clock, Grace was dressed in a simple black dress from the closet, one of dozens Thomas had bought on Hope alone, and trying not to throw up from nerves. She'd faced down plenty of hard things in her life. Hunger, loneliness, uncertainty, but walking into a room full of strangers as Valentina Calder, returned heiress, felt impossible. You look beautiful, Thomas said from her doorway. He'd changed into a suit, but kept it casual. No tie, jacket unbuttoned. But if you're not ready for this, we can wait. There's no rush. No, I want to do this. Grace smoothed the dress. Just don't leave me alone, okay? I don't know these people. I won't leave your side for a second. The guests arrived in a trickle. Marcus Chen, Thomas's business partner, who'd apparently known Valentina as a baby, Sarah and David Wu, family friends who'd organized search parties 19 years ago, Dr. Linda Reeves, the therapist Thomas had been seeing since Margaret died. They all stared at Grace with variations of the same expression. Wonder, disbelief, and something that looked almost like fear, like seeing her alive broke something in them. They'd carefully built around her absence. My God, Sarah Wu breathed, tears already streaming. Thomas, she has Margaret's eyes, and your stubborn chin, Marcus added with a laugh that sounded suspiciously wet. I can't believe, after all these years. Grace smiled and shook hands, and accepted hugs from people who felt like strangers, but looked at her like she was a miracle. It was overwhelming, and wonderful, and terrifying all at once. Then Eleanor arrived. She swept in wearing a severe gray dress, her expression carved from ice. Thomas, I came as you requested. Thank you for being here. Thomas kept his arm around Grace's shoulders. I wanted you to hear this from me. The DNA test came back. Grace is Valentina. My daughter. She's really come home. Eleanor's eyes flickered to Grace, cold and assessing. May I see the results? Thomas handed her the folder Dr. Chen had provided. Eleanor read through it carefully, her lips pressed into a thin line. When she finished, she closed the folder with a sharp snap. "These tests can be falsified," she said. The room went silent. Grace felt Thomas tense beside her. "Eleanor," Marcus said carefully, "those results came from Dr. Chen. You know her reputation." "I know that people can be bought." Eleanor's gaze never left Grace. "I know that when there's money involved, integrity becomes flexible. And I know that this young woman has everything to gain by convincing Thomas she's his daughter. The necklace," Thomas started, "could have been stolen or forged." Eleanor finally looked at her brother-in-law. "Thomas, I understand you want to believe. God knows I understand that. But you need to think rationally. This girl shows up out of nowhere, wearing a necklace that may or may not be authentic, with a convenient story about amnesia and orphanages. I have memories," Grace said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Of the sunflower painting, of feeding ducks at the park, of bedtime stories with funny voices, things I couldn't know unless I was there. Eleanor's smile was pitying. Or things you were told about, perhaps by someone who did know the real Valentina. Someone who helped you construct this elaborate lie. That's enough. Thomas's voice went hard. "Eleanor, I know you're trying to protect me, but this isn't protection. This is paranoia. The DNA doesn't lie. Grace, Valentina, is my daughter. And once she's officially recognized as your heir," Eleanor continued, voice rising, "have you thought about what questions might surface? Questions about who really took her that day. Questions that might implicate—" She stopped abruptly, like she'd said too much. Thomas frowned. "Implicate who?" Eleanor recovered quickly. "Anyone connected to the family. The publicity will be intense. Investigators will reopen the case. Every detail of that day will be examined again. Are you prepared for that scrutiny? For what they might find? The threat. Because it was definitely a threat, hung in the air like smoke." "I have nothing to hide," Thomas said coldly. "And if reopening the investigation helps us understand what happened to my daughter, then I welcome it. Maybe we'll finally get answers about who took her." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you'll discover that some answers are better left buried." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I hope for your sake, Thomas, that you're right about her. Because if you're wrong, if this is a con, it will destroy what's left of this family. And if you're right," she looked back at Grace, something dark flickering in her eyes, "well, that might be even worse." She left, the door closing behind her with finality. The remaining guests tried to salvage the evening, but Eleanor's words had poisoned the celebration. They left early, offering congratulations that felt more like condolences. "Don't let her get to you," Thomas said after everyone had gone. They sat in the living room, the remains of the untouched celebration dinner growing cold in the kitchen. "Eleanor has always been difficult, but she'll come around once she accepts this is real." But Grace kept thinking about Eleanor's words. That strange slip. Questions that might implicate who? What did Eleanor know about that day that she wasn't saying? "Dad," Grace said slowly. "What if Eleanor knows something about what happened to me?" Thomas looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" She got weird when she mentioned questions coming up, like she was worried about something specific being discovered. Grace leaned forward. "What if she knows who took me?" "Eleanor," Thomas shook his head. "No. She loved Margaret. She loved you. She would never, maybe not directly, but what if she knows something, saw something? What if she's been protecting someone all these years?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "You think I should ask her? I think we need to find out what she's hiding, outside." Night had fallen completely, but inside, in the warmth and light of the Calder mansion, Valentina Grace was finally, truly home. Even if that home held darker secrets than either of them had imagined, Grace couldn't sleep that night. Eleanor's words kept circling in her mind like vultures. That strange panic when she'd almost said too much. The way her eyes had gone dark when she looked at Grace, like she was seeing a problem that needed solving. At 3 a.m, Grace gave up on sleep entirely. She wrapped herself in a robe and padded through the quiet mansion, her feet silent on expensive carpet. She wasn't sure where she was going until she found herself outside Thomas's office. The door was unlocked. Inside, moonlight streamed through the windows, illuminating shelves lined with books and business awards. But Grace wasn't interested in those. She was looking for something else, She found the filing cabinet tucked in the corner. 3 drawers of what looked like personal documents. The top drawer was locked, but the second opened easily. Inside were folders organized by year, each one meticulously labeled in Thomas's precise handwriting. Grace pulled out the folder marked 2006, Valentina. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were police reports, private investigator summaries, newspaper clippings, all the documentation of her disappearance. Grace read through them slowly, seeing her own story from the outside for the first time. Margaret Calder states she looked away for approximately 2 to 3 minutes. No witnesses observed the child leaving the park. Extensive search of the surrounding area yielded no evidence. It was clinical and heartbreaking all at once. But what caught Grace's attention was a handwritten note clipped to one of the investigators' reports. The handwriting was different from Thomas's. Rounder, more feminine. Thomas. I spoke with the lead detective today. He's not optimistic about finding her alive at this point. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but we need to start preparing ourselves for the worst. For Margaret's sake, we should consider a memorial service. It might help her find closure. Eleanor? Grace flipped through more pages, finding other notes in that same rounded handwriting. Eleanor had been deeply involved in the search, it seemed, coordinating with investigators, speaking to police, organizing volunteer efforts. But there was something off about the notes, something that made Grace's skin prickle. I've asked the investigators to focus on the park and immediate area. No need to waste resources on broader searches. The detective wanted to look into family connections. I told him that was unnecessary. We know everyone close to Valentina. Thomas, you're exhausting yourself with these wild leads. Let me handle communications with the investigators. You need to focus on Margaret. Each note seemed helpful on the surface, but underneath, Grace could see a pattern. Eleanor systematically narrowing the search, controlling information, discouraging certain avenues of investigation. Why would she do that? Unless... What are you doing? Grace jumped, spinning around to find Thomas in the doorway. He was wearing pajamas and a robe, his hair mussed from sleep. I'm sorry, Grace said quickly. I couldn't sleep and I needed to understand what happened. I shouldn't have gone through your files without asking. Thomas crossed to her, looking at the papers spread across his desk. His expression went distant. I haven't looked at these in years. After a while, it was too painful. Dad, look at these notes. Grace showed him Eleanor's handwriting. She was involved in the investigation, right? Of course, she was devastated when you disappeared. Spent months helping organize searches. Talking to police, she was... Thomas trailed off, really reading the notes for the first time. She was always very focused on specific areas. Specifically focused on limiting the search, Grace said. Look, here she's telling investigators not to look at family connections. Here she's discouraging broader searches. It's like she was trying to control what they found. Thomas sank into his desk chair, studying the notes with new eyes. I never thought about it that way. At the time, I was grateful she was taking charge. Margaret was falling apart, and I was barely holding it together. Eleanor seemed like the only one thinking clearly, or the only one making sure they didn't look in the right places. Grace pulled out another folder. This one marked, Financial, 2006. Can we look at this? Thomas nodded, and together, they went through his financial records from that year. Most of it was business transactions, investments, standard wealthy person money movement. But then Grace found something odd. A series of withdrawals in the weeks following her disappearance. Cash withdrawals, $50,000 total, spread across several transactions. Do you remember taking this money out? Grace asked. Thomas frowned. No, I might have. Everything from that time is a blur. Why? It's just unusual. You have records of every other transaction, what it was for, who it went to, but these cash withdrawals have no notation. Could have been for private investigators, Thomas said. I hired several who wanted payment off the books. Maybe, but Grace's instincts said otherwise. She kept digging, pulling out more folders, until she found one labeled Estate Management, 2006. Inside were property records, household expenses, and staff payment records. Grace flipped through them until she found what she was looking for. A list of people who had access to the Calder estate and accounts that year. Thomas Calder, Margaret Calder, and Eleanor Price, listed as family financial advisor. Eleanor had access to Thomas's accounts. She could have made those withdrawals herself. Dad, Grace said slowly, Eleanor had access to your money. She could have taken this cash without you knowing. Thomas's face went pale. You think Eleanor took $50,000? I think Eleanor might have used $50,000 to pay someone to take me. The words hung in the air between them, too terrible to be real but too logical to dismiss. Thomas shook his head. No, Eleanor loved you. She loved Margaret. She would never... Did she love Margaret? Grace interrupted. Or did she resent her? You said Eleanor always thought Margaret wasted her potential marrying you. What if it was more than that? What if she hated that Margaret had what she didn't? A family. Money. Happiness. That's not... People don't kidnap children over jealousy. People do terrible things for all kinds of reasons. Grace thought about Eleanor's face at the dinner party, the way she'd looked at Grace like she was a problem to be eliminated. And now I'm back, and I'm a threat, not just to whatever secret she's keeping, but to her position in this family. Once I'm officially recognized as your heir, she loses her influence. Thomas finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. She's been the Calder family representative for years, making decisions, controlling narratives. With you back, she becomes irrelevant. They sat in silence. The evidence spread before them like accusations. It wasn't proof, not the kind that would hold up in court, but it was enough to paint a picture that made Grace's stomach turn. We need more, Thomas said finally. Before we accuse her of something like this, we need solid proof. The cash withdrawals aren't enough. I could have authorized them and forgotten. We need to connect her directly to what happened. The orphanage, Grace said suddenly. Someone dropped me there and paid them to take care of me. There must be records, descriptions of who it was, maybe even security footage if we're lucky. Thomas was already reaching for his phone. The orphanage in Fresno, right? I'll have my investigators look into it first thing in the morning. No, Grace put her hand over his. Not your investigators. Eleanor might have connections to them. She helped hire them 19 years ago, didn't she? We need to do this ourselves. Thomas looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Tomorrow, we drive to Fresno. Just you and me. We talk to whoever's still there from 2006 and see what they remember. And Eleanor, we don't tell her anything. Let her think we've accepted her doubts and moved on. If she knows we're investigating her, she might destroy evidence. Or worse. Grace thought about Eleanor's cold eyes, her carefully controlled rage. You think she'd hurt us? I think someone who could kidnap a 5-year-old child is capable of anything. Thomas pulled Grace into a hug. But I also think we're going to find out the truth. And when we do, Eleanor Price is going to pay for every year you lost. They stayed up the rest of the night, going through files, making notes, building their case. By the time the sun rose, they had a plan. And somewhere across town, Eleanor Price slept peacefully, not knowing that the daughter she'd tried to erase had come back with a memory and a mission. The truth was coming for her, and it wouldn't be gentle. They left for Fresno at dawn, Thomas behind the wheel of an unmarked sedan instead of his usual Mercedes. No sense advertising who we are, he'd said. Grace agreed. This trip needed to stay off Eleanor's radar. The drive took 3 hours, giving them plenty of time to rehearse their story. They'd pose as family members doing genealogy research, looking into Grace's time at the orphanage. Nothing threatening. Nothing that would make anyone defensive. Saint. Catherine's home for children sat on the outskirts of Fresno, a tired-looking building that had probably been hopeful once, but now just looked worn down by decades of housing other people's unwanted kids. Grace felt a pang looking at it. She'd lived here, slept in one of those rooms, ate in that cafeteria, played in that small yard. She didn't remember any of it. You okay? Thomas asked, watching her face. Yeah, just weird, you know. This place was my home for 5 years, and it's like looking at a stranger's house. They walked to the front entrance together, and Thomas squeezed her hand. We've got this. The woman at the front desk was young, too young to have been here in 2006, but she was friendly enough when Thomas explained they were looking for information about Grace's time at the orphanage. I'd love to help, but our records from that far back are pretty limited, she said apologetically. Budget cuts, you know. We don't keep as much as we probably should. Is there anyone still working here who might have been around in 2006? Grace asked. Someone who might remember? The receptionist thought for a moment. Sister Mary Catherine. She's been here forever. Like, literally since the 70s. She's semi-retired now. But she comes in on Thursdays to help with... She glanced at the calendar. Oh, hey, today's Thursday. She should be in the chapel if you want to talk to her. The chapel was small and quiet. Smelling of old wood and candle wax, Sister Mary Catherine knelt in the front pew, her gray habit worn soft with age. She looked up when they entered, and Grace saw immediately that this was a woman who'd seen everything life could throw at children, and had somehow maintained kindness despite it all. "Can I help you?" Her voice was gentle, Irish accent still thick after what must have been decades in America. "Sister, my name is Grace Murphy. Well, it used to be. I think I stayed here when I was 5 years old. Back in 2006. I was hoping you might remember something about how I arrived." Sister Mary Catherine's eyes sharpened with interest. 2006. That's a long time ago, dear. What makes you think I'd remember you specifically? Because someone brought her here, Thomas said. Someone who paid for her care up front and then disappeared. I'm Thomas Calder. Grace is my daughter. She was kidnapped 19 years ago. And we're trying to figure out who took her. The nun's hand went to the cross around her neck. Lord have mercy, kidnapped. But the woman who brought her said, "You do remember," Grace breathed. "Sister, this is important. What did she say? What did she look like?" Sister Mary Catherine gestured for them to sit. When they did, she closed her eyes, reaching back through years of children and crises to find this one memory. It was late spring, I think, April or May. A woman came with a little girl. You, I suppose. The child was quiet, withdrawn. The woman said she was a distant relative, that there'd been family trouble, and the girl needed somewhere safe to stay temporarily. She paid cash, quite a lot of it, enough to cover a year's care at least. What did she look like? Thomas leaned forward. The woman, can you describe her? Elegant? That's the word that comes to mind. Older than the typical parent we deal with. Maybe late 40s, early 50s, well-dressed, expensive clothes. She had this way of talking that made it clear she was used to people doing what she said. Grace felt her heart pounding. Did she give a name? If she did, I don't remember it, and I doubt it was real anyway. Sister Mary Catherine opened her eyes. I had my suspicions even then. Something about the situation felt wrong. The little girl was clearly traumatized. Wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat. But the woman insisted everything was fine, that the child just needed time and stability. Why didn't you call the police? Thomas's voice was strained. I wanted to, but the woman, she made it very clear that involving authorities would be bad for everyone, especially the child. And she'd paid enough money that my superiors were reluctant to question too closely. We needed the funding. The nun's face crumpled with old guilt. I'm sorry. I should have pushed harder. But I told myself at least the child was safe here. Warm and fed, that was better than wherever she'd been. Grace reached out and took the nun's wrinkled hand. You didn't do anything wrong. You helped me. You kept me safe. Do you have any records from that time? Thomas asked. Anything at all that might help us identify this woman? Sister Mary Catherine shook her head. Our records from that period are sparse, but... She paused, something occurring to her. We did have security cameras back then, just at the entrance. They were old, barely worked half the time, but they were there. The recordings were kept on tapes in the director's office. Are they still there? Grace asked urgently. I don't know. Father Murphy was director then. He passed 5 years ago. The new director might have kept them, might have thrown them out. We're not required to keep surveillance footage for more than a year. She stood. But we can ask. Come with me. The current director's office was cramped and cluttered. Boxes of old files stacked in corners. Director James Riley was a harried-looking man in his 40s who seemed overwhelmed by the question. Security tapes from 2006. Jesus, I don't know. Father Murphy wasn't exactly organized. There's still boxes of his stuff in the storage closet we haven't gone through. Can we look? Thomas asked. Please, it's important. Riley shrugged. Sure, why not? Doors unlocked. Good luck finding anything in there, though. The storage closet was worse than Grace expected. A jumble of old records, broken equipment, and miscellaneous junk accumulated over decades. But she and Thomas dove in, pulling out boxes, checking labels when there were any, opening containers to see what was inside. 40 minutes later, Grace found them. "Dad, look." She held up a cardboard box labeled Security 2005-2007 in faded marker. Inside were dozens of VHS tapes, each one marked with a date range. Thomas pulled them out one by one, checking dates. April 2006, May, here, May 15, 2006. Sister Mary Catherine peered at the date. That would be right around when she arrived. They borrowed Riley's ancient VCR and television. Setting it up in an empty office, Thomas slid the tape in, and they watched grainy black and white footage of the orphanage entrance from 19 years ago. Days flicked by and fast forward, children coming and going, staff arriving for shifts. Nothing remarkable then. On May 19th at 3:47 p.m., a car pulled up. Grace hit pause. The image was grainy, and the angle wasn't great, but you could make out a dark sedan. A woman got out of the driver's seat, elegant even in silhouette. She opened the back door and helped a small child out. A little girl with brown hair wearing a dress that looked too fancy for an orphanage. The woman held the child's hand as they walked toward the entrance. Just before they went inside, the woman looked directly at the camera. The angle was perfect. Grace's breath caught, even through the poor quality. Even across 19 years, the face was unmistakable. Eleanor Price. Thomas made a sound like he'd been punched. "Oh my God, it's her, it's really her," Sister Mary Catherine gasped, hand over her mouth. Grace rewound it, paused it again on that moment when Eleanor looked at the camera. Her face was younger but just as cold, just as composed. She knew she was being recorded. She didn't care. "We need this tape," Thomas said, voice shaking. "We need copies, multiple copies." "I'll make them myself," Riley said from the doorway. None of them had noticed him watching. His face was pale. "Jesus Christ, that little girl. That was you." Grace nodded, unable to speak. "And that woman took you, kidnapped you, and dumped you here." Riley looked sick. "I'll make you as many copies as you need, and I'll write a statement confirming the tape's authenticity and chain of custody. You're going to nail this bitch to the wall, right?" "Absolutely," Thomas said. His voice was cold steel. "Sister, would you be willing to testify to what you remember? Make a formal statement." "I'll do more than that," Sister Mary Catherine said firmly. "I'll pray that woman burns in hell for what she did, and then I'll watch her trial and make sure God gets the memo." 2 hours later, Grace and Thomas left St. Catherine's with 3 copies of the tape, written statements from both the nun and the director, and enough evidence to destroy Eleanor Price's life. They drove in silence for the first hour, processing what they'd found. Then Thomas pulled over at a rest stop and just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel. "I trusted her," he said finally. "For 19 years I trusted her. Let her help run my business, make family decisions. And the whole time, she was the one who took you. She looked me in the eye and helped me search for you, knowing exactly where you were." Grace put her hand on his arm. "We have proof now. She's not getting away with this." Thomas looked at her, and his expression was something Grace had never seen before. Pure, cold rage. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow we confront her with this, and then we watch her world burn." Thomas called Eleanor that night, his voice carefully neutral. "We need to meet. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock at the house. It's important." Grace could hear Eleanor's clipped response through the phone. "This is about the girl, isn't it, Thomas? I thought we agreed. 10 o'clock. "Eleanor, don't be late." He hung up before she could argue. They spent the rest of the evening preparing. Thomas called his lawyer, Marcus Chen, and Dr. Reeves, his therapist. "I need witnesses," he explained. "People who can testify that Eleanor was present, that she heard everything we're about to show her." Grace set up Thomas's laptop in the main living room, queuing up the digital copy of the security footage they'd made. She'd watched it a dozen times now, and each viewing made her angrier. Eleanor's face as she led that little girl into the orphanage. So calm, so composed, like she was dropping off dry cleaning instead of abandoning a traumatized child. "You don't have to be here for this," Thomas said. watching Grace's face. "If it's too much, you can wait upstairs. I can handle Eleanor." "No." Grace's voice was firm. "I need to see her face when she realizes we know. I need to hear her try to explain what she did." Thomas pulled her into a hug. "She's going to lie. She's going to deny everything. Try to twist it around. You need to be ready for that." "I am." But Grace wasn't sure she was ready. Not really. How do you prepare to confront the person who stole your childhood, who looked your father in the eye for 19 years knowing she'd destroyed his family? Eleanor arrived at exactly 10 o'clock, because of course she did. She swept into the house wearing a navy pantsuit, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was heading to a board meeting, not a confrontation. "Thomas?" She nodded coolly. "Grace, I see we're making this a family affair." Her eyes landed on Marcus and Dr. Reeves, already seated in the living room, and bringing an audience. How dramatic. "Sit down, Eleanor," Thomas said. His voice was colder than Grace had ever heard it. Eleanor's eyebrow arched, but she sat. "Very well. What's this about?" "I have a meeting at 11:30, so let's make this quick." Thomas picked up a remote and pressed play. The TV screen flickered to life, showing grainy black and white footage. The orphanage entrance. The date stamp in the corner. May 19th, 2006, 3:47 p.m. Eleanor's face went very still. They watched in silence as the car pulled up, as the elegant woman got out, as she helped the small child from the back seat, as she led her toward the entrance, her hand gripping the little girl's with false gentleness. And then, the moment, the woman looking directly at the camera, her face clear enough to identify. Thomas paused it there. Eleanor's younger face filled the screen, unmistakable. "That's you," Thomas said quietly. "At St. Catherine's Home for Children in Fresno on May 19th, 2006, 4 days after Valentina disappeared from that park in Pasadena." The room was silent, except for Eleanor's breathing, which had gone quick and shallow. "Where did you get this?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "From the orphanage," Grace said, along with a statement from Sister Mary Catherine, who remembers you very clearly. She described you as elegant and used to people doing what she said. She said you paid cash, a lot of it, and told her I was a distant relative who needed temporary care due to family trouble. Eleanor's hands were clenched in her lap, knuckles white. This is doctored, fake. You manipulated this footage." "We have the original tape," Thomas interrupted. "Multiple copies. We have sworn statements from the nun who took you in, from the current director who verified the tape's authenticity and chain of custody. We have financial records showing $50,000 in cash withdrawals from accounts you had access to in the weeks after Valentina disappeared. Those withdrawals were for what, Eleanor?" Thomas's voice rose. "For what possible reason did you need to take $50,000 in cash from my accounts right after my daughter was kidnapped?" Eleanor's jaw clenched. "I want my lawyer. You can call whoever you want, but first, you're going to sit here and listen." Thomas stood, pacing like a caged animal. "For 19 years, you looked me in the eye. You helped me search for my daughter. You comforted me when Margaret died. You told me to move on, to accept that Valentina was probably dead, and the entire time, you knew exactly where she was. You put her there. You don't understand," Eleanor started. "Then make me understand," Thomas shouted. "Make me understand how my sister-in-law, someone I trusted, someone Margaret loved, could take a 5-year-old child and dump her in an orphanage like she was garbage." Eleanor stood abruptly, her composure cracking. "Because Margaret didn't deserve her. None of you deserved what you had." The words hung in the air like poison. Grace felt her stomach drop. Thomas went very still. "What did you say?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Eleanor laughed, and it was a bitter, broken sound. "You really want to know? Fine, I'll tell you. Margaret was my younger sister. Did you know that? 2 years younger, but she was always the favorite, always the pretty one, the charming one, the one everyone loved. I worked twice as hard, got better grades, built a better career, and what did I get? Nothing, while Margaret married a rich man and got handed everything on a silver platter. So you were jealous?" Grace said, her voice shaking. "You kidnapped me because you were jealous of your own sister." Eleanor turned to her, eyes blazing. "I was tired of watching her waste it all. She had money, a beautiful child, a life most people would kill for, and she was miserable. Always complaining about Thomas working too much, about feeling alone. She didn't appreciate what she had. "So you decided to take it away," Thomas said. "You decided to destroy our family." "I decided to teach her a lesson," Eleanor snapped. "I thought—" She stopped, as if realizing she'd said too much. "You thought what?" Marcus prompted quietly. "What was the plan, Eleanor?" Eleanor sank back into her chair, the fight seeming to drain out of her. "I thought she'd appreciate Valentina more if she was gone for a while. Just a few weeks. I was going to find her at the orphanage, be the hero. Margaret would be grateful, would finally understand how lucky she was." Grace felt sick. "A few weeks. You left me there for 19 years. Because Margaret fell apart." Eleanor's voice broke. She was supposed to get scared, supposed to realize what she had. Instead, she went into this spiral. Stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and I couldn't just produce Valentina then. Everyone would know I'd taken her. I'd go to prison. "So you let your sister die," Thomas said, disgust dripping from every word. "You let Margaret destroy herself with guilt and grief, and you said nothing." "I didn't mean for her to die." Eleanor's face crumpled. "I loved my sister. I wanted her to see, to understand. To understand what? That you're a monster." Grace couldn't keep the fury from her voice. "You stole my childhood. You killed Margaret. You let Dad suffer for 19 years, and for what? Because your sister had something you wanted." Eleanor looked at Grace, and for the first time, there was something like remorse in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know that means nothing, but I am. When you came back, when I saw you wearing that necklace, I knew everything was going to come out. I tried to discredit you, tried to make Thomas doubt, but I couldn't." "Couldn't what?" Thomas demanded. "Couldn't murder my daughter a second time." The words hit like a slap. Eleanor flinched. "I called the police on my way here," Marcus said into the silence. "They should be arriving any moment." "Eleanor Price, I strongly suggest you don't say another word without legal representation." As if on cue, they heard sirens outside. Eleanor stood slowly, straightening her jacket like she was preparing for that board meeting after all. "Thomas, Don't." Thomas's voice was ice. "Don't say my name. Don't apologize. Just go. And pray I never see you again outside a courtroom." 2 police officers entered, and Marcus handed them a folder containing copies of the evidence. "Eleanor Price, we have footage and testimony placing you at the scene of a child abduction. You need to come with us." Eleanor didn't resist as they read her rights, didn't protest as they led her toward the door, but as she passed Grace, she stopped. "I did love you, you know," she said quietly. "When you were little, you were such a happy child. I'm glad you survived what I did to you. I'm glad you found your way home." Grace looked at the woman who'd stolen everything from her and felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, just emptiness. "I hope it was worth it," Grace said. "Because you lost everything too." Eleanor's face crumpled. But the officers were already guiding her out. Through the window, they watched her being placed in the back of a police car, her perfect composure finally, completely shattered. When the sirens faded, the house fell silent. Thomas pulled Grace into his arms, and they stood there, holding each other while the weight of 19 years finally began to lift. "It's over," Thomas whispered into her hair. "It's finally over." But Grace knew it wasn't over. Not really. There would be trials, testimony, media attention. There would be trauma to process and years to mourn. But Eleanor was gone. The truth was out. And Grace was home. Truly home. With a father who'd never stopped looking for her. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The media storm hit within hours. By evening, every major news outlet was running the story. Missing heiress found after 19 years. Aunt arrested for kidnapping. Grace watched from the living room as reporters gathered outside the estate gates, their cameras pointed at the house like weapons. Thomas had hired security to keep them at bay, but their voices still carried, shouting questions, demanding statements, hungry for any scrap of the story. "We don't have to talk to them," Thomas said, standing beside her at the window. "We can wait this out. Eventually, they'll move on to the next story. But Grace shook her head. They're not going anywhere. And the longer we stay silent, the more they'll speculate, make up their own narrative. She turned to face him. I want to tell our story, the real one. Before Eleanor's lawyers try to twist it into something else. Thomas studied her face. Are you sure? Once you go out there, there's no taking it back. Your life will never be private again. It was never private, Grace said, the moment I put on that necklace. My privacy ended, at least this way. I control the narrative. They held a press conference the next morning in the front garden, the rose bushes providing a backdrop that was both beautiful and deeply ironic. Grace stood at the podium with Thomas beside her, their lawyer Marcus on her other side. The crowd of reporters was massive, easily 50 people with cameras, microphones, and notebooks. Grace took a breath and began. My name is Valentina Grace Calder, 19 years ago, when I was 5 years old. I was taken from a park in Pasadena by my aunt, Eleanor Price. She drove me to an orphanage in Fresno, paid for my care with cash, and left me there. For the next 19 years, I lived believing I had no family, no history, no real identity. 3 weeks ago, my father saw me working in his garden and recognized a necklace he'd given me as a child. DNA testing confirmed what he suspected, that I was his missing daughter. The reporters erupted with questions, but Marcus held up a hand. Please hold all questions until the end, Grace continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Eleanor Price has been arrested and charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, and conspiracy. We have security footage showing her bringing me to the orphanage. We have testimony from staff members who remember her. We have financial records showing cash withdrawals from my father's accounts that match the payments made to the orphanage. The evidence is overwhelming and irrefutable. Why did she do it? Someone shouted from the crowd. Grace had been expecting that question. Eleanor has confessed that she took me because she was jealous of her sister, my mother, Margaret. She wanted to teach her a lesson about appreciating what she had. She planned to return me after a few weeks, but my mother fell into such severe depression that Eleanor couldn't admit what she'd done without facing prison time. So she stayed silent and let my mother die of grief 2 years later. The reporters were scribbling furiously. Cameras flashed like lightning. My father never stopped searching for me, Grace said, looking at Thomas. For 19 years, he looked for me in every face, followed every lead, never gave up hope. And Eleanor was there the entire time, helping with the search while knowing exactly where I was. That level of deception, that level of cruelty, I can't even find words for it. Thomas took over then, his voice thick with emotion. I trusted Eleanor with my business, my family, my grief. She betrayed that trust in the most unforgivable way possible. But she didn't win. My daughter is home. That's what matters. Justice will be served. But what I care about most is that Valentina is here, and we have a chance to rebuild what was stolen from us. They took questions after that, carefully vetted ones that Marcus approved. Yes, Grace was officially recognized as Thomas's heir. No, they wouldn't be pursuing civil damages beyond what the criminal case provided. The point wasn't money, it was justice. Yes, Grace planned to keep working with Gardens because she loved it, regardless of her newfound wealth. One reporter asked the question Grace had been dreading. Do you remember anything about the day you were taken? Grace paused, then decided on honesty. Fragments. I remember feeding ducks at the park. I remember someone coming up to me and saying my father had sent them, that it was a surprise. I believed them because I was 5 years old. After that, everything goes dark until the orphanage. My therapist says the trauma caused my brain to suppress most of those early memories. They're starting to come back now, but it's slow. Do you hate your aunt? Grace considered that. Hate takes energy I don't want to give her. I'm angry. Yes, I'm devastated by what she took from me. My childhood. My mother, 19 years with my father. But hate, no. I mostly just feel sorry for her. She destroyed 3 lives, including her own because she couldn't handle her sister being happy. That's not hate. That's just sad. The press conference ended, and Grace felt like she'd run a marathon, but it was done. Their story was out there, in their own words, before Eleanor's inevitable attempts at spin control could take hold. The trial began 2 months later. Grace sat in the courtroom every day, Watching as prosecutors methodically destroyed Eleanor's defense, the security footage played on a large screen for the jury. Sister Mary Catherine testified, describing the elegant woman who'd brought the traumatized child. The financial records were entered as evidence. Even some of Eleanor's old colleagues testified that she'd always seemed resentful of her sister's happiness. Eleanor's lawyers tried everything. They claimed she'd been mentally ill, that the kidnapping was a psychotic break. They suggested Margaret had been complicit, that this was some kind of custody arrangement gone wrong. They even tried to argue that Grace had been better off at the orphanage than with her grieving, unstable parents. None of it worked. Grace took the stand on the fourth day, and she looked Eleanor directly in the eye as she testified. Eleanor looked smaller now, diminished. Her perfect hair had gone gray at the roots. Her expensive clothes had been replaced with a plain suit. She looked like what she was, a bitter woman who'd destroyed everything trying to hurt her sister. "Did you recognize the defendant when you first met her?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Grace said. "I had no memories of her. But she recognized me. She knew exactly who I was. And she tried to convince my father I was a fraud. She knew if I was accepted back into the family, questions would be asked about the kidnapping. She was protecting herself. And when you discovered she was responsible for your abduction, how did you feel?" Grace thought about that. Betrayed, angry, but mostly just sad. Sad for what could have been. Sad for my mother, who died never knowing I was alive. Sad for my father, who suffered for 19 years unnecessarily. And sad for Eleanor, who let jealousy poison her into becoming a monster. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts, Eleanor was sentenced to 25 years in prison, effectively a life sentence for a woman her age, as the bailiff led her away. She looked back at Thomas and Grace one final time. Her lips moved, forming words Grace couldn't hear but could read. "I'm sorry. Too little. Too late." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again, but Grace was ready this time. She read a prepared statement thanking the jury, the judge, Sister Mary Catherine, and everyone who'd helped bring Eleanor to justice. She announced that she and Thomas were establishing a foundation to help find missing children and support families dealing with abduction. "Eleanor Price took 19 years from me," Grace concluded. "But she doesn't get to take my future. She doesn't get to define who I am. I'm Valentina Grace Calder, daughter of Thomas Calder and Margaret Calder. I'm home, and that's what matters." The reporters applauded, an unusual breach of professional distance that spoke to how much the story had moved them. That night, back at the estate, Thomas and Grace sat in the living room with glasses of wine, processing the end of the ordeal. "It's really over," Thomas said, almost like he couldn't believe it. "Eleanor's going to prison. Justice was served. Justice was served." Grace agreed. "But Mom's still gone. Those 19 years are still lost. Nothing brings that back." "No," Thomas said quietly. "Nothing brings it back. But we can build something new. Something good. That foundation. We can help other families avoid what we went through. We can turn this tragedy into something meaningful." Grace raised her glass. "To new beginnings. To coming home," Thomas countered. They drank to both, sitting in comfortable silence as night fell over the garden where everything had begun. Eleanor was gone. The truth was known, and while the scars would never fully heal, at least they could finally start to fade. The Shadow Queen had fallen, and the light was coming back. 3 months after Eleanor's sentencing, Grace stood in an empty field on the outskirts of the Calder estate, watching as workers prepared the ground. Thomas stood beside her, holding architectural plans that had been revised a dozen times until they were perfect. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "It's a big commitment." Grace smiled. "I'm sure. Mom would have loved it." The Margaret Calder Memorial Garden was going to be magnificent. 5 acres of sunflowers, thousands of them, interspersed with walking paths, benches, and a small gazebo at the center. It would be open to the public, free of charge, a place for families to gather, for children to play, for people to remember that even in darkness, beauty could grow. The sunflowers should be ready to plant next week, the landscape architect said, approaching with soil samples. "If we get them in now, they'll bloom by late summer. It's going to be spectacular." Grace had insisted on helping with the planting herself. She'd spent 19 years working with her hands in the dirt, And she wasn't about to stop now just because she had money. Thomas had hired a team of gardeners, but Grace worked alongside them, teaching them techniques she'd learned in the fields and greenhouses where she'd grown up. "You know you don't have to do this, right?" Marcus had said when Grace announced her plans. "You're an heiress now. You could hire people." "I am hiring people," Grace interrupted. "I'm just also getting my own hands dirty. It's who I am, Marcus. Money doesn't change that." The foundation was up and running, too. The Valentina Calder Foundation for Missing Children had already helped reunite 2 families in its first month of operation. Grace and Thomas had hired investigators, counselors, and advocates. They'd partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country. They were making a difference. But this garden, this was personal. Grace walked the perimeter of the field, imagining it filled with golden blooms swaying in the breeze. In the center, where the gazebo would stand, they'd placed a bronze plaque, in memory of Margaret Calder, beloved mother and sister, who loved her daughter with her whole heart. May this garden remind us that love never dies. It only transforms into something new. Thomas came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "She would be so proud of you, of who you've become despite everything." "I wish I remembered her better," Grace said quietly. "I have flashes now. Her laugh, the way she smelled like lavender, how she'd sing off-key in the car. But it's not enough. I want to remember everything. You were 5. Even if nothing had happened, your memories of her would be fragmented." Thomas rested his chin on top of her head. "But I can tell you about her. Every day if you want. Every story. Every moment she was funny and smart and terrible at cooking. She cried at commercials. She believed in magic. Real magic. The kind that made ordinary moments special." Grace turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Tell me about the day I was born." Thomas's eyes softened. "It was raining. This crazy thunderstorm in April. Margaret was convinced you'd wait until it passed. But you had other plans. We barely made it to the hospital. She was laughing the whole way. Actually laughing. Saying you were already stubborn like your old man. Was she scared? Terrified? But excited too. When they put you in her arms for the first time, she just stared at you like she couldn't believe you were real. She counted your fingers and toes 3 times. Then she looked at me and said, 'Thomas, we made a person, an actual person.' How is that not magic?" Grace felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I wish I could tell her I turned out okay. That despite everything, I'm here, and I'm whole." "She knows," Thomas said firmly. "Wherever she is, she knows. And she's proud." They spent the rest of the afternoon planning the garden, making decisions about bench placement and pathway materials. Grace wanted it perfect, a living tribute to a woman she barely remembered, but loved desperately. That evening, they had dinner on the terrace overlooking the estate. Mrs. Chen had prepared Grace's favorite, simple grilled chicken with roasted vegetables and fresh bread. Nothing fancy, nothing trying to be impressive, just good food shared between father and daughter. "I've been thinking," Grace said, tearing off a piece of bread, "about the house." Thomas looked up. "What about it?" "It's huge, and it's just the 2 of us. What if we opened part of it, made it useful for something other than echoing with our footsteps?" "What did you have in mind?" Grace leaned forward, excited. "What if we partnered with foster care agencies, offered the guest wing for kids aging out of the system, give them a place to stay while they get on their feet, help with job training, college applications. We have the space. We have the resources. Why not use them?" Thomas stared at her for a long moment, then started laughing. "Your mother would have loved that idea. She was always trying to bring home strays, dogs, cats. Once even a kid from her college class who'd been evicted. I'd come home and find strangers at our dinner table." "So is that a yes?" "That's absolutely a yes." Thomas raised his wine glass. "To putting this house to good use, and to you for having your mother's heart." They clinked glasses as the sun set over the garden, painting everything in shades of gold and orange. Grace felt a contentment she'd never known before, a sense of belonging that went deeper than DNA or money or anything else. She was home, really, truly home. Later that night, Grace stood in her room, no longer the guest room but hers, decorated now with photos and mementos, evidence of a life being rebuilt. and opened her jewelry box. The necklace lay inside, the golden heart still shining despite 19 years of wear. She picked it up, running her thumb over the engraved star. "To Valentina, my eternal star, Dad." Grace clasped it around her neck, feeling the familiar weight settle against her chest. She'd worn it every day at the orphanage, through foster homes and hard jobs and lonely nights. It had been her only connection to a past she couldn't remember. Now it was a bridge between who she'd been and who she was becoming. She walked to her window and looked out at the estate grounds. In a few months, sunflowers would bloom where that empty field now stood. The foundation would help more families find what she'd found: each other. And somewhere, in whatever came after this life, maybe Margaret was watching and smiling. Grace touched the necklace, feeling it catch the moonlight. "I'm home, Mom," she whispered. "I'm finally home." A knock on her door made her turn. Thomas stood there, looking uncertain. "Sorry, I know it's late. I wanted to give you something." He held out a worn leather journal. "This was your mother's. She started it when she was pregnant with you. I couldn't read it after she died. It hurt too much. But I think maybe now is the right time. I think maybe you should have it." Grace took the journal with trembling hands. She opened to the first page and saw her mother's handwriting, round and cheerful, full of loops and flourishes. "Dear baby, today I found out you're a girl," your father cried. "He pretends he didn't, but he did. We're going to name you Valentina because it means strong and healthy. And that's all we want for you. Be strong, little one. Be healthy. Be happy. Be everything we dream you can be." Grace looked up at Thomas through tears. "Thank you. Thank you for keeping this. For keeping everything. I never gave up," Thomas said simply. "I never stopped believing you'd come home. And now here you are, exactly where you're supposed to be." He kissed her forehead, the same way he used to when she was 5, the same gesture she was finally starting to remember, and left her alone with her mother's words. Grace read late into the night, discovering Margaret through her own thoughts and dreams and hopes for her daughter. With each page, the woman became more real, less a ghost and more a person Grace could know and love. By the time she finally fell asleep, the journal clutched to her chest. Grace understood something fundamental. She hadn't lost 19 years. She'd survived them, and survival was its own kind of victory. The next morning, Grace woke early and went down to the garden. The sun was just rising, painting the roses and hydrangeas in soft morning light. She walked to the spot where she'd first caught Thomas's attention, where he'd seen the necklace and everything had changed. The necklace caught the sunrise, throwing sparkles of gold light across the dew-covered grass. Grace smiled, touching the heart-shaped pendant. It had led her father to her, had been her North Star through 19 years of darkness, had brought her home. "Thank you," she whispered, not sure if she was talking to the necklace, to fate, to her mother, or to the universe itself, maybe all of them. Grace turned back toward the house, where she could see Thomas making coffee in the kitchen, and felt overwhelming gratitude for second chances, for stubborn fathers who never gave up, for DNA that told the truth, for memories that could heal, for home. She walked toward the house, the rising sun at her back and the necklace shining against her heart, ready to start the rest of her life. The star had come home, and she was finally, beautifully, whole.